Our world feels like it is unraveling at the seams. You feel it in the news, in the markets, in the very air we breathe. This pervasive uncertainty is not a modern invention. The ancient Romans lived through times just as chaotic, their empire constantly threatened by war, plague, and political collapse. And one man, the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, wrote these words to himself in the midst of it all: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not a philosophy of passive retreat. It is a battle-tested framework for building an unshakable inner fortitude, a way to engage with a chaotic world not from a place of fear, but from a position of profound power. By the end of this, you will possess a complete Roman Stoic blueprint for cultivating a strength that no external collapse can ever break. We will uncover how they mastered the critical distinction between what we can and cannot control, and how they built an impenetrable mental fortress within. What does true resilience look like to you when everything else falls away? When everything seems to be falling apart, what is the one thing that remains entirely yours? It is not your job, your savings, or the stability of nations. The Roman Stoics identified a single, unbreachable line in the sand, a concept so fundamental it forms the bedrock of all inner strength. They called it the dichotomy of control. Your power does not lie in commanding the chaos of the world, but in mastering your own mind's reaction to it. The philosopher Epictetus, born a slave and no stranger to profound powerlessness, opened his teaching manual with this exact idea. He wrote, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us." Our opinions are up to us, our impulses, our desires, our aversions. Whatever is not our own doing, like our reputation, our wealth, or our health, is not up to us. He draws that line with absolute clarity. The global market's political turmoil, the alarming news headline that flashes on your screen, these are all outside your control. They belong to the realm of externals, but your judgment of that headline, your decision to not be consumed by panic, your choice to act with integrity instead of fear, these things are entirely and always up to you. This is the ultimate shift from feeling like a victim of circumstance to becoming the author of your response. Think of a situation causing you anxiety right now. Perhaps it is the instability of your industry or a personal conflict. Now, take a mental pen and divide that worry into 2 columns. In the first, list everything about it that is outside your control, the actions of others, the final outcome, the past. In the second, write down the single thing that is within your control, your next move, your attitude, your effort. This simple act of categorization is not just an exercise, it is the first act of taking back your power. What 3 things are you carrying with you today that feel heavy with worry? Can you see the line between what the world is doing and what you choose to do about it? The Romans didn't just build walls of stone, they understood the necessity of building walls of the mind. This is the concept of the inner citadel, a fortress not of brick and mortar, but of disciplined thought and unwavering principle. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire in near constant turmoil, would retreat into this mental stronghold daily. In his private writings, he reminds himself, people look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, or in the hills. But this is altogether unphilosophical when you can at any hour retreat into yourself. Nowhere can a person find a retreat more full of peace or more free from care than his own soul. This was not an escape from reality, but a deliberate practice of mental discipline. He was actively creating an inner space where his judgment remained clear, his values intact, and his peace unassailable, no matter the chaos crashing at the gates. Think of the psychological safe haven you need today amidst the relentless noise of global events and personal pressures. Your inner citadel is that private, unshakable core. It is where you go to reclaim your perspective when fear and uncertainty threaten to overwhelm you. How do you build such a place? It begins with a conscious decision about what you allow past your mental walls. Every piece of alarming news, every negative comment, every wave of anxiety is like a messenger at the gate. You have the choice to examine it calmly, learn from it if you can, and then let it go without letting it ransack your inner peace. Consider a personal crisis that mirrors a global collapse, like the sudden loss of a job. The external event is the storm. Your inner citadel is the space from which you choose your response. Do you panic, lashing out in fear and desperation? Or do you retreat into that calm center, assess your skills, lean on your true relationships, and plan your next move with a clear head? The fortress walls are built from your deepest values, perhaps integrity, resilience, or compassion. These are the principles that protect you from being swayed by every passing emotion or external disaster. So take a moment and visualize your own inner citadel. What does it look like in your mind's eye? Is it a quiet library of calm thought, a stark mountaintop with a clear view of the horizon, or an impenetrable vault where your truest self resides? What are the values that form its foundation and guard its entrance? This is not a fantasy. It is the architecture of an unbreakable mind. What if, instead of being ambushed by your fears, you could invite them in for a conversation? The Roman Stoics perfected a powerful mental drill for exactly this purpose, a practice they called the Premeditation of Evils. This is not the anxious worrying we know so well, that spiral of helpless dread. This is its opposite, a calm, rational rehearsal of potential challenges, designed to drain them of their emotional power and arm you with a plan. The philosopher Seneca, a man who navigated the treacherous politics of Nero's court, regularly practiced this. He advised in his letters to let the mind anticipate what could happen, not to live in fear, but to soften the blow of fortune by stripping away the element of surprise. He wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and by premeditating, we bring that imagined suffering into the light of reason. Think of it as a fire drill for the soul. You do not conduct a fire drill because you are certain the building will burn down. You do it so that if the alarm ever sounds, your body and mind know the procedure, and panic is replaced by purposeful action. Apply this to a fear you might be carrying. Perhaps you are anxious about a difficult conversation you need to have with a loved one or a colleague. The Premeditation of Evils would have you sit down in a quiet moment and mentally walk through the very worst outcome. Imagine them reacting with anger, with hurt, with rejection. Now, instead of freezing at that thought, you ask yourself the crucial Stoic question, and then what? How would I respond? What would a person of character and reason do next? You would remain calm. You would speak with integrity. You would respect their feelings without compromising your own principles. The fear of the unknown is replaced by the clarity of a chosen path. Now apply this to a larger scale, to the global collapses we so often fear. What is the worst-case scenario that haunts you? A sudden economic downturn that impacts your livelihood. Instead of letting that anxiety swirl in the background of your mind, bring it to the forefront. Acknowledge it fully. If that happened, what would be within my control? I could reassess my expenses. I could lean on my network for support. I could focus on skills that remain valuable in any climate. I would still have my capacity for effort, my ability to adapt, my inner resilience. By mentally walking through this landscape, you are not inviting disaster. You are mapping it. You are proving to yourself that even in the worst of circumstances, your agency does not vanish. Your inner citadel remains standing. So take a fear you hold for the future, and for a moment give it your full and reasoned attention. Walk through the steps of that worst-case scenario, not as a victim, but as the calm, resourceful architect of your own response. What one action could you take today that would fortify you for that possible tomorrow? The Stoics proposed a radical idea, not just to endure what happens to you, but to love it. This is the profound meaning of Amor Fati, the love of one's fate. It is the final, most powerful piece of the Roman blueprint for inner strength, moving beyond mere acceptance to a deep, active embrace of every single event in your life. Imagine the power of looking at any setback, any collapse, and saying, "This too is for my good." Epictetus, who understood hardship intimately, framed it as a matter of will. He said, "Do not seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for things to happen as they do, and your life will go well." Marcus Aurelius echoed this, reminding himself to accept the thread of fate, no matter how coarse, that the gods have woven for you. This is not about passive resignation. It is about a fundamental shift in perception, where every obstacle is transformed into fuel for your growth, and every difficulty becomes a necessary part of your unique path. Think of a skilled sailor on a vast ocean. The sailor does not waste energy cursing a strong wind or a sudden storm. They do not plead for a different ocean or a calmer day. Instead, they learn the art of sailing. They adjust their sails. They use the very wind that threatens to blow them off course to propel them forward. The obstacle becomes the way. Now apply this to your own life. Consider a major career setback you may have faced, a project that failed, or a promotion that went to someone else. The conventional reaction is disappointment, frustration, a sense of injustice, but through the lens of Amor Fati, you can choose to love that event. You can ask, what did this failure teach me about my own weaknesses? What new direction did it force me to consider that I was too comfortable to see before? That closed door might have pushed you toward a path far more aligned with your true purpose. On a global scale, consider a large economic shift or a societal change that causes widespread anxiety. To love this fate is not to approve of every outcome, but to accept the reality of the event itself and to find your agency within it. It is to ask, what strengths does this new landscape demand of me that I have not yet developed? What opportunities for innovation, for community, for simpler living are hidden within this crisis? This mindset turns you from a passive victim of global events into an active participant in your own story, using the friction of reality to sharpen your character. So look back on your recent past. What is one difficulty that felt overwhelming at the time, but in hindsight, gifted you with a crucial lesson or an unexpected strength? That is the first spark of Amor Fati. To love your fate is to trust the process of your own life, believing that every thread, even the darkest ones, is essential to the tapestry. Let's pull the camera back, far back, until our planet is just a pale blue dot suspended in an endless, silent black. Our bustling cities, our sprawling nations, all of it vanishes into a single, fragile speck of dust. This is the essence of the Stoic view from above, a powerful mental exercise to regain perspective when the world feels like it is collapsing in on you. It is about consciously zooming out from the intense close-up of your immediate problems to see your life within the vast theater of the cosmos. Marcus Aurelius constantly practiced this to ground himself. He would write reminders to view human affairs from this elevated vantage point, to see the sheer number of people who have struggled, loved, and died, and to recognize how quickly all of it, the triumphs and the disasters, are swallowed by time. He asked himself to look at the endless abyss of time behind you and the infinite expanse ahead. In the face of that is your current anxiety not a little thing. This is not meant to belittle your struggles, but to contextualize them. That political scandal dominating the news cycle, the personal conflict that feels all-consuming, the financial worry that keeps you up at night, from this cosmic vantage point, they lose their overwhelming weight. They become small, temporary events on a tiny world in a forgotten corner of a galaxy. The goal is to drain the drama and return to a state of tranquility, to see that your life, however turbulent, is a brief and beautiful part of a much larger whole. The next time you feel the walls closing in, caught in the riptide of a 24-hour news cycle or a personal drama, try this. Close your eyes, imagine yourself lifting up through the roof above the streets, watching your town shrink to a map, your country to a shape, the earth itself to a marble. From there, look back at your worry, how much of its power remains. Now take it one step further. Project your mind 100 years into the future. Look back at your life today, that problem which feels so monumental right now, where will it be? It will be a memory, a lesson learned, a story you tell, or perhaps forgotten entirely. The sharp edges of the crisis will have been softened by the relentless flow of time. This exercise does not solve your problems for you, but it does solve the anxiety around them. It returns you to your inner citadel with a calm mind and a clear heart, ready to engage with the world not as a life or death struggle, but as a human being playing your small, significant part in a grand, eternal story. So, what is the one concern that feels heaviest on your shoulders today? Can you see it from the view of a century from now? What if the first story your mind tells you about an event is almost always wrong? This is the critical insight behind the Stoic discipline of Assent, the practice of becoming the vigilant gatekeeper of your own thoughts. Before any emotion can take root and commandeer your peace, this discipline asks you to insert a single, powerful pause. It is in that space between an event and your reaction that your true freedom lies. Epictetus laid out the entire framework with stunning simplicity. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." The event itself is neutral. It is your judgment, your instant interpretation, that paints it with fear, anger, or despair. Your mind presents you with an impression, a raw piece of data, and the discipline of Assent is your trained response to say, "Wait. Let me see this for what it truly is." Consider the modern equivalent of a Roman rumor. You receive a terse email from your manager that simply reads, "We need to talk first thing tomorrow." The initial impression your mind rushes to serve you is one of panic. You have done something wrong, you are in trouble, layoffs are coming. This story feels completely real, and your body responds as if it is a fact. Your heart races, your stomach tightens. The undisciplined mind accepts this impression as truth and spends the entire night in a state of dread. But the mind trained in Assent intercepts that initial story. It pauses and questions the impression. It says, "The email states a meeting is required. That is the only fact I possess. The story about my failure or impending doom is a narrative I am adding, an interpretation that may be entirely false." Perhaps the manager wants your input on a new project. Maybe a routine procedural change needs to be discussed. By withholding your assent from that first, fearful judgment, you reclaim your tranquility. You choose not to suffer needlessly for a story that has not yet been written. This applies directly to the global collapses we witness from afar. A shocking news headline flashes across your screen, crafted to trigger an immediate emotional response: outrage, fear, hopelessness. The undisciplined mind consumes the headline, accepts its most alarming interpretation as absolute truth, and is swept away. The disciplined mind sees the headline for what it is, an initial impression. It pauses and asks, what are the verified facts here, separate from the commentary? What perspective might be missing? This does not make you ignorant, it makes you judicious. It protects your inner citadel from being stormed by every piece of information designed to agitate you. Think back to a recent moment when you had a strong emotional reaction. Perhaps a friend was unexpectedly short with you, and your mind immediately told you a story of offense, that you had done something to anger them. You carried that frustration for hours. Now apply the discipline of assent in hindsight. What was the bare fact your friend spoke briefly? What was the story you instantly believed, that their tone was directed at you with malice? What is a more reasoned alternative judgment? They could have been stressed from a difficult work call or worried about a personal matter entirely separate from you. By interrogating that first impression, you disarm it. Your peace no longer depends on the unpredictable actions of others, but on your own sovereign power to decide what is true. What single impression have you accepted today that deserves a second, more thoughtful look? Every Roman general celebrating a triumph had a slave whispering in his ear, "Remember, you are mortal." Amidst the roaring crowds and the peak of worldly power, this stark reminder was the ultimate grounding force. This is the essence of Memento Mori, the contemplation of your own mortality, and the Stoics wielded it not as a dark obsession, but as the sharpest tool for clarifying a life of purpose. It is the final key to unlocking the urgency and virtue that global instability demands. When everything feels like it could crumble, remembering that your own time is profoundly limited stops you from wasting a single moment on what does not truly matter. Seneca, in his letters, cuts to the heart of it. He wrote that we are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied but wasteful of it. He urges us to place each day as if it completes our life, to live immediately. This is the powerful shift. The awareness of death is not a reason for panic, but a filter for your attention. It asks a simple, brutal question in every situation. Does this truly matter in the final accounting of my life? The trivial anxieties that consume so much of our mental energy, the social slights, the endless consumption of trivial news, the procrastination on our deepest goals, all of it is exposed as noise when held against the reality of your finite time. This remembrance fuels decisive action. It is the force that pushes you to finally mend that broken relationship, because you understand there may not be a someday to reconcile. It is the clarity that helps you walk away from a soul-crushing job to start that meaningful project you have always talked about. It is the courage to speak your truth with loved ones because you know the opportunity is not guaranteed. On a global scale, when systems seem fragile, Memento Mori does not counsel a frantic hoarding of resources, but a deliberate investment in what is lasting: your character, your contributions, the love you give and receive. It asks you to build a legacy not of wealth but of virtue, something that no market crash can erase. So, bring this home with a single, personal question. If you knew with certainty that you had 1 year left to live, what would you stop doing immediately, and what would you start? The space between your answers to those two questions is the very map for the life you are being called to live right now. The Stoics believed in practicing poverty, even in times of plenty. This sounds like a strange form of self-punishment, but it was actually a brilliant form of psychological inoculation. They called it voluntary discomfort, a deliberate and temporary embrace of hardship to build a resilience that would protect them when real hardship arrived uninvited. Seneca, a man of immense wealth, would regularly set aside his riches. He would wear poor clothing, sleep on a hard bed, and live for days on nothing but simple bread and water. He was not trying to prove a point to others. He was testing his own self-sufficiency, asking himself one critical question: is my happiness dependent on these external comforts, or is it rooted in something unshakable within me? By voluntarily stepping into a state of lack, he was proving to himself that he could endure it, that his peace was not held hostage by his material circumstances. This practice systematically reduces the fear of loss, that deep-seated anxiety about what might be taken from us by an unstable world. When you have already faced a version of that loss on your own terms, its shadow loses its power over you. Think of it as training for a marathon. You do not wait for race day to attempt the full distance. You push your body in practice runs. You experience the discomfort of fatigue, so that on the day of the actual event, your mind and body know they can handle the strain. Voluntary discomfort is the same mental and emotional training for the marathon of life. In our modern context, this does not mean you need to sell your possessions and live in a hut. It is about finding small, deliberate ways to step outside your comfort zone. It could be taking a cold shower instead of a warm one, not as a punishment, but as a practice in embracing a sensation you did not choose. It could be a 24-hour digital detox, disconnecting from the constant stream of information to rediscover the quiet within. It could be as simple as choosing to walk for a short errand you would normally drive, or preparing a very simple meal instead of an elaborate one. In each of these small acts, you are not just enduring discomfort. You are having a conversation with your own dependence. You are observing the part of you that complains, that seeks the easy way, and you are gently reminding it that you are in charge. You are building a reference library of experiences that prove to you, beyond any doubt, that you can handle more than you think. So choose one small comfort, just one, to voluntarily set aside for a single day. Perhaps it is that second cup of coffee, the constant background noise of the television, or the habitual scroll through social media. Observe what arises in you when it is missing. Is it agitation, a sense of lack, or does a new kind of space and clarity begin to emerge? This small act is a direct deposit into your account of inner fortitude, a personal experiment in discovering that you are far more resilient than your comforts have led you to believe. The ancient Stoics saw the universe not as a collection of separate events, but as a single, living organism. They called this profound interconnectedness Sympathaea, a rational cosmos where every part is woven into the whole, and every action sends a ripple through the entirety of existence. In an age of digital isolation and fragmented news cycles, this perspective is a powerful antidote to the feeling that you are facing global collapse alone. It reminds you that you are not a solitary island, but an integral thread in a vast, breathing tapestry. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this idea to ground his sense of duty. He wrote to himself, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." Your personal resilience is inextricably linked to the well-being of the whole human community. He saw himself as a branch connected to the tree of humanity and a leaf on the greater tree of the cosmos itself. When you feel the weight of the world, this view reframes your struggle from a private burden into a shared human experience. You are not the only one feeling the tremors of economic uncertainty or environmental concern. Millions of others are navigating the same vast, stormy sea, each in their own boat. This shared reality is the foundation for genuine empathy. When you read about a family displaced by a climate event on another continent, Sympathaea asks you to see them not as distant strangers, but as fellow leaves on the same tree, feeling the same wind. This understanding naturally cultivates a sense of global citizenship. Your choices, from the products you buy to the energy you conserve, are not isolated acts. They are your contribution to the health of the hive. Environmental stewardship, for instance, ceases to be an abstract political issue and becomes a personal responsibility to the living organism of which you are a part. Caring for the planet is simply caring for your own extended body. So consider for a moment one routine action you will take today, perhaps your morning coffee or your commute. How is that single action connected to the well-being of a farmer in another country, or to the air someone on the other side of the world will breathe? Your life is already in constant, silent conversation with the whole world. What will your next word be? In the gap between what happens to you and your response lies your greatest source of strength. This is the Stoic Pause, a practical superpower you can cultivate to reclaim control over your emotional world. It is that intentional, almost imperceptible moment of space you insert between a triggering event and your reaction, a sacred sliver of time where raw impulse is intercepted by reason. It is here, in this brief sanctuary, that you transition from being a puppet jerked by the strings of circumstance to becoming the conscious author of your actions. The Roman teacher Epictetus gave us the fundamental truth that makes this pause so powerful. He taught that we are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the opinions we form about them in an instant. That opinion, that initial judgment, is the seed of all your subsequent anxiety or anger. The pause is the space where you get to examine that seed before you let it take root and grow into a full-blown emotional storm. Think of the last time you received a stressful email, perhaps one that felt like a personal attack or carried bad news. The immediate, visceral reaction is to fire back a defensive or panicked reply. This is the untrained mind at work, a reflex with no governor. But by imposing a deliberate pause, by deciding you will wait 1 hour or even just 10 minutes before you respond, you change the entire dynamic. You step out of the reaction loop and into the observation deck. In that hour, your initial heat cools. You can reread the email and see it not as a personal dagger, but as a piece of communication, perhaps poorly worded, from someone who is also under pressure. You can consider a response that is measured, professional, and virtuous, one that addresses the issue without sacrificing your own dignity. This simple act of waiting transforms you from a reactive participant to a strategic architect of the situation. The pause does not require a grand gesture. It can be as simple as taking 3 deep, conscious breaths the very next time you feel the surge of anger in a conversation or the cold grip of anxiety from a news alert. In those 3 breaths, you are not doing nothing. You are actively creating a buffer zone between the external stimulus and your inner world. You are giving your higher mind, your reasoning faculty, a chance to get to the command center before your amygdala hijacks the entire system. This is the daily, moment-to-moment training that fortifies your inner citadel. So the next time you feel that familiar jolt, that urge to lash out or to spiral into worry, see if you can catch it. Just for a moment, press pause. In that quiet space, ask yourself one question. Is my immediate interpretation of this event the only possible truth, or is there a more reasoned and empowered judgment I can choose to hold? In a world that feels like it is losing its structure, how do you know what your job is? The Stoics offered a clear and grounding answer through the concept of oikeiosis, the process of recognizing and embracing your natural roles and the duties that come with them. Your identity is not a single, monolithic thing. It is a composite of your relationships and responsibilities. You are a son or a daughter, a parent, a neighbor, a friend, a citizen, and an employee. Stoicism teaches that your path to meaning and strength is not found in chasing a single, grand destiny, but in performing each of these present roles with absolute excellence, regardless of the chaos swirling around you. Epictetus put it plainly when he said that you must perform the duties of your position. Do not hope for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go well. The emphasis is on the quality of your action within the sphere you already occupy. Marcus Aurelius, while ruling an empire, constantly reminded himself of his own roles. He wrote, "I am a man, a citizen of the world, and a Roman emperor." Each of these titles carried specific duties, and his focus was on fulfilling the obligations of his station with justice, integrity, and diligence. This framework is incredibly stabilizing when the larger world seems to be collapsing. If you feel lost in your career or disconnected from your community, the answer is not necessarily to abandon everything and start over. Your strength can be rebuilt by looking at the roles you already hold and asking how you can perform them with more virtue. Consider someone who feels their work has lost all meaning because of industry instability. They have the role of a provider, a colleague, and a craftsman. Their strength comes from focusing on the duties inherent in those roles. They can choose to be the most supportive and reliable colleague, the most diligent and honest worker, the most creative problem solver in their team. By doing so, they build an inner citadel of professional integrity that no market fluctuation can destroy. The meaning is generated from the inside out through the excellence of their character in action. On a community level, your role as a neighbor or a citizen becomes paramount when societal structures feel fragile. Your duty is not to single-handedly fix the world, but to bring reason and kindness to your immediate circle, to be a stabilizing force on your street, in your local grocery store, or in your online community. This is how resilient networks are built, one fulfilled duty at a time. So take a moment to look inward. What are your 3 most important roles in life right now? Perhaps you are a parent, a friend, and a creator. For each one, ask yourself a single, practical question. What is one concrete way I can better fulfill my duty in this role today? It might be listening to your child without distraction, reaching out to a friend who is struggling, or dedicating 1 hour of focused, quality work to a project that matters to you. This is not about adding more to your plate, but about bringing more presence and purpose to the plates you are already holding. What if you lost everything you have right now? Not in a future collapse, but in this very moment. The Roman Stoics practiced a powerful exercise to answer that question, not to invite fear, but to unlock a profound appreciation for the life you already live. This is negative visualization, the deliberate act of imagining the loss of the people, possessions, and circumstances you hold dear. It is a conscious meditation on impermanence designed to transform your relationship with the present. Seneca, who lived through exile and immense personal danger, advised us to remind ourselves that fortune gives us nothing to hold permanently. He wrote that we should love all our dear ones, but always with the thought that we have no promise that we may keep them forever. This is not pessimism, it is the ultimate realism that sharpens the sweetness of now. By mentally subtracting what you have, you are forced to see its true value, a value often dulled by the comfort of routine. Consider your health. You likely move through your day without a second thought for your ability to walk, to see, to breathe easily. Now close your eyes for just a moment and vividly imagine what it would be like to lose that freedom. Picture the frustration, the limitation, the longing for the simple mobility you currently possess. When you open your eyes, that ability to walk across the room is no longer a mundane given. It feels like a miracle, a gift you have just been handed anew. The same practice applies to your key relationships. Think of the person you love most. Instead of taking their presence for granted, allow yourself to fully imagine a world without them. Feel the hollow ache of that absence, the silence where their laughter used to be. This mental exercise is not meant to paralyze you with dread. Its purpose is to jolt you into a state of acute, present-moment gratitude. When you next see that person, your interaction will be colored by this sobering awareness. You will listen more intently, you will speak more kindly, you will cherish the ordinary moment of simply sharing a meal because you have felt the ghost of its loss. Even your job, for all its frustrations, provides stability and purpose. Imagine it vanishing overnight. Feel the initial shock, the uncertainty about your future. Then, when you return to your work, the tedious tasks might feel different. The opportunity to be productive, to contribute, to use your skills, is revealed as a privilege, not a burden. This practice systematically dismantles your attachment to externals by proving that your appreciation for them does not require their actual loss, only the thoughtful contemplation of that possibility. It prepares your heart for life's inevitable changes, making you more resilient and less prone to devastating grief when change does arrive. So, take the next 5 minutes. Sit quietly and choose one thing you deeply cherish, something you rarely pause to appreciate. It could be your sight, your home, or a specific person. Now walk through the mental landscape of its loss. Imagine the details, the emotions, the empty space it would leave. Then let that scenario go and return to the present. Look at that person, feel that ability, experience that possession with the fresh eyes of someone who has just gotten it back. What does it feel like to receive your own life as a gift once again? The Stoics found freedom in a simple shift, caring not if you win, but only if you fought well. This is the dichotomy of action, a refinement of their core philosophy that separates your diligent efforts from the final outcome. Your intentions, your preparation, your commitment to acting with integrity, these are entirely within your control. The result, however, is a complex web of other people's decisions, timing, chance, and circumstance, which lies largely beyond it. To tie your sense of self-worth and inner peace to that external result is to hand over the keys to your own happiness to forces you can never command. The Stoic Archer, as described by Epictetus, provides the perfect analogy. A master archer does everything within their power. They select the straightest arrow, they practice their form for thousands of hours, they draw the bow with a steady hand, and they take careful aim. They control their skill, their focus, and their release. But once the arrow leaves the bowstring, it is no longer theirs to command. A sudden gust of wind can deflect it, a moving target can dodge it, or sheer bad luck can intervene. If the archer's entire sense of success is tied to the arrow striking the bullseye, they will be perpetually anxious and often disappointed. But if the archer's satisfaction comes from knowing they executed the shot with perfect skill and virtue, then they have already succeeded, regardless of where the arrow lands. Their peace is invulnerable to the whims of the wind. Now bring this into your own life with a powerful example. Applying for a dream job, you can control the quality of your research on the company. You can control the hours you spend preparing thoughtful answers to potential questions. You can control your punctuality, your professional appearance, and the sincerity and enthusiasm you convey during the interview. You can do all of this with excellence. What you cannot control is the internal candidate the hiring manager already had in mind. You cannot control a sudden company-wide hiring freeze enacted by a distant executive. You cannot control whether your particular personality happens to click with the interviewer on that specific day. If you define your success by receiving the job offer, you set yourself up for potential devastation, even if you performed flawlessly. But if you define your success by the quality of your effort, by the pride you take in your own preparation and your courageous performance, then you walk out of that interview room a winner, no matter what the email says a week later. This mindset liberates you to act with total commitment, unburdened by the fear of failure. You pour your entire being into the process, precisely because you have released your attachment to the prize. So think of one goal you are actively pursuing right now, perhaps a fitness target, a creative project, or a difficult conversation you need to have. Now make a mental list. What specific actions, attitudes, and efforts are truly within your control on this path? And what final outcome are you currently holding onto that you need to gently release? Refocus all your energy on the first list, on the quality of your effort alone, and feel the weight of expectation lift from your shoulders. Your relentless chase for approval might be the crack in your own foundation. The ancient Stoics saw the hunger for fame and fortune as a dangerous trap, a form of slavery to things that can be given and taken away in an instant. They counseled a radical shift to cultivate a profound indifference to these external markers and to build your self-worth on the unshakable ground of your own character. Seneca, who moved through the highest circles of Roman wealth and power, saw through its glittering facade. He warned that to be greedy for praise is to hand over your happiness to other people whose opinions are fickle and flawed. He saw wealth not as a blessing but as a form of servitude, asking what difference there is between being a slave to a man and a slave to your possessions. This is not an argument for poverty but for freedom. When your sense of value is tied to your reputation or your bank account, you have anchored your soul to a shore that is constantly eroding. A market crash, a shift in public opinion, a failed project, any of these can then feel like a personal annihilation. But when your worth is derived from your integrity, your courage, your justice, and your compassion, you become immune to these external collapses. These are virtues that no one can bestow upon you and no one can take away. Consider the modern archetype of the social media influencer, whose entire emotional state might swing on the number of likes and shares a post receives. Their day is a roller coaster of validation and anxiety, their peace held hostage by the algorithms and attentions of strangers. Their self-worth is a commodity traded in a volatile market. Now contrast that with the quiet tranquility of a nurse who finds deep satisfaction not in public recognition, but in the private knowledge that she eased a patient's suffering with kindness and skill. Her value is generated from within through the quality of her actions, and it remains steady regardless of who is watching. This inner citadel of self-regard cannot be stormed by a negative comment or a financial downturn. So take a moment for a starkly honest reflection. Grab a pen and write down the answer to this single question. What are the 3 things that truly define my worth? And as you write, enforce one strict rule. You cannot list your job title, your income, your possessions, your number of followers, or any other external metric. Your answers must be qualities of character, actions you take, or principles you live by. Perhaps you will write your honesty, your resilience in the face of personal hardship, or your dedication as a friend. Seeing these words on paper makes them tangible. It proves that your essential value has nothing to do with the world's applause and everything to do with the person you choose to be when no one is looking. A river does not resist the rocks in its path, it flows around them. This is the way of nature, and it is the very rhythm of existence the Stoics learned to dance with, not battle against. Impermanence is not a tragedy to be mourned. It is the fundamental law of the cosmos. Every single thing you see, from the grandest empire to the most stable economy, is in a state of constant, inevitable flux. Inner strength, the Roman kind, is not built on the fantasy of stopping this river, but on the courage to let go of the shore and learn to swim in its currents. Marcus Aurelius, watching his own world shift and shudder, filled his private journal with this truth. He wrote of the fleeting nature of all things, reminding himself that the memory of entire cities, once bustling and glorious, is soon buried in oblivion. He observed how even the most celebrated individuals are quickly forgotten, their fame swallowed by the relentless flow of time. Time is a river, a violent current of events, he noted, and no sooner is a thing brought to sight than it is swept past and another takes its place. This was not a morbid fixation for him, it was a source of profound liberation. By accepting the temporary lease on everything, he freed himself from the paralyzing fear of loss. Consider the modern career path. The model of a single job for life has dissolved. You may find yourself in an industry that is transforming, a role that is becoming obsolete, or a company that is restructuring. The instinct is to resist, to cling to the familiar shore of what was. This resistance is the source of your anxiety, the feeling of being left behind. But the Stoic philosophy of impermanence asks you to see this change not as a personal failure, but as the natural flow of the river. Your strength lies in your adaptability, in your willingness to learn a new skill, to pivot into a new niche, to see the end of one chapter not as a catastrophe, but as the necessary clearing of space for the next. This applies with equal force to the evolution of relationships and societal norms. A friendship that once felt essential may naturally drift apart as your lives take different paths. The social rules you grew up with are being rewritten. Fighting this internal change is like trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands. It exhausts you and changes nothing. Flowing with it means honoring what was, acknowledging the value it held, and then releasing it with grace to make room for what is emerging. So, bring this home with a single, personal question. What is one thing you are currently resisting changing in your own life, and what would happen? What new strength might you find if you finally embraced its impermanent nature? Marcus Aurelius wrote his book Meditations not for an audience but for his own soul. These pages were his private ground for nightly training, a written conversation with himself to forge the inner strength required to lead an empire. This practice of Stoic journaling transforms abstract philosophy into lived wisdom, building resilience one honest sentence at a time. The simple act of writing forces a clarity that fleeting thoughts can never achieve. It is here, in the quiet space of reflection, that you can hold your actions up to the light of your principles and see where they align and where they have strayed. Seneca championed this same habit, advising a daily examination of self. He suggested we ask ourselves each night what maladies of the mind we have cured, what passions we have resisted, and in what ways we are better. This is not about self-criticism, but about self-correction and steady growth. To begin your own practice, you need not write an essay. Start with a simple 3-sentence template. First, ask what you did well today. Perhaps you successfully paused before reacting to a frustrating email, exercising the discipline of assent. Second, consider where you allowed externals to control your peace. Maybe a piece of bad news sent you into an afternoon of anxiety, and you see now how you handed over your tranquility. Third, decide on one small thing you can improve tomorrow. You might resolve to practice negative visualization for just 1 minute upon waking, to greet the day with a deeper sense of gratitude. This nightly ritual is how you build your inner citadel brick by brick. It is the practical tool that turns the day's chaos into the raw material for your strength. So tonight, before you sleep, take out a notebook or even a blank screen. Write just 3 sentences that honestly answer this single question. How did I live out one Stoic principle today, and how can I live it better tomorrow? For the Stoic, courage is not being fearless, it is feeling the fear and doing what is right anyway. This virtue is a form of practical wisdom, the clear-eyed understanding of what principles are worth defending and what external consequences are merely temporary discomforts to be endured. It is the will to align your actions with your character, even when every instinct screams for retreat. Seneca, who faced exile and the constant threat of imperial disfavor, wrote that sometimes even to live is an act of courage. He saw that the brave person is not the one who feels no terror, but the one who overcomes it, who judges that some things are more terrible than the fear itself, things like betraying your integrity or abandoning your duty. Look to the historical figure of Cato the Younger, a Roman senator who became a living symbol of Stoic resolve. In a republic collapsing into dictatorship, Cato chose to stand for liberty until the very end, knowing his stance would lead to his ruin. His courage was not a blind charge, but a conscious, principled sacrifice. He felt the weight of his decision, the fear for his family and his own life, yet he acted in accordance with what he knew to be right, proving that courage is the virtue that makes all other virtues possible. Now bring this into the scale of your own daily life. Think of the courage required to voice an unpopular opinion in a team meeting, to challenge a questionable practice when staying silent would be the easier, safer path. Your heart might pound, your palms may sweat. This is the fear present. Courage is what allows you to take that breath and speak your truth with respect and conviction. Or consider the deeper, more personal courage needed to end a relationship that is no longer healthy, despite the fear of being alone. It is the courage to make a difficult ethical choice in your business, to turn down a lucrative deal that conflicts with your values, trusting that your integrity is the greater long-term asset. In a world that feels unstable, this Stoic courage is your anchor. It is not a reckless fearlessness that ignores danger, but a measured, intelligent strength that acknowledges the risk and proceeds with moral clarity. So look inward with honest eyes. Where in your life is fear currently holding you back from an action you know, in your quietest moments, is the right one to take? What single step could you take this week, however small, that would be an act of courage in that arena? In a world obsessed with more, what if the secret to strength was realizing you already have enough? This is the Stoic principle of sufficiency, a quiet rebellion against the endless hunger that modern life so often encourages. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, which meant understanding the razor-thin line between our authentic needs and our manufactured wants. Your true needs are remarkably few: food, water, shelter, purpose, and human connection. Everything beyond that is a want, a layer of desire that, while not inherently bad, becomes a chain when you believe you cannot live without it. The philosopher Musonius Rufus, a teacher of Epictetus, was adamant about this distinction. He taught that luxury and extravagance are the greatest evils, not because wealth itself is sinful, but because it weakens the soul. He argued that a simple life is the training ground for virtue, forcing you to rely on your inner resources rather than external comforts. When you simplify your desires, you systematically dismantle your dependency on the very systems that can collapse: the volatile markets, the fragile supply chains, the unpredictable job market. Your peace is no longer mortgaged to things that can be taken away. Consider two people facing the same economic downturn. One has stretched their finances to the limit, burdened by debt from luxury cars, a massive mortgage, and the constant pressure to maintain a certain social appearance. Every news alert about the economy sends a jolt of pure panic through their system, their entire sense of security tied to a house of cards. The other person lives well within their means. They find deep contentment in experiences, in learning, in the quality of their relationships. Their home may be smaller, their car older, but their life is rich with things that no bank can foreclose on. When the downturn arrives, the first person is paralyzed by fear, their world threatening to implode. The second feels the same economic pressures, but their core peace remains unshaken, because their sufficiency was never based on excess in the first place. Their self-reliance and contentment form an inner economy that is immune to recession. So take a moment for a starkly clarifying exercise. Grab a pen and write down the 5 things you consider the absolute essentials for a good and meaningful life. Not the luxuries, not the upgrades, but the true fundamentals: your health, your family, your ability to learn, your sense of purpose. Now look at the landscape of your daily worries. How many of your anxieties are actually about securing or protecting things that did not make it onto that short list of 5? That gap is the space where your freedom is waiting to be claimed. We are born wanting pleasure and avoiding pain, a primal instinct that served our ancestors well. The Stoic seeks to rewire this default setting through a profound mental training known as the discipline of desire. This is not about suppressing your wants, but about consciously reprogramming them to align with what is truly good, honorable, and most importantly, within your power to achieve. The ultimate aim is to desire only one thing, the unwavering cultivation of your own virtue. The philosopher Epictetus, who began his life in chains, understood this path to liberation better than anyone. He taught that freedom is secured not by fulfilling your desires, but by eliminating the toxic ones. He argued that when you tie your happiness to external things like wealth, status, or the approval of others, you have effectively chained your soul to a post. You become a slave to whatever can grant or take away those things. True freedom, he insisted, comes from wanting only what you can guarantee for yourself: the integrity of your character, the justice of your actions, the courage of your convictions. This discipline systematically cuts the link between your inner peace and the unpredictable world outside. Consider the common desire for a promotion at work. Operating on your default setting, you might crave that new title for the status it confers, the larger office, the increased salary. You tie your sense of self-worth and happiness to an outcome that depends on a manager's decision, a company's budget, or a competitor's performance. This is a recipe for anxiety and frustration. The discipline of desire reframes this entirely. You shift your primary want from getting the promotion to performing work of such excellence and integrity that a promotion would be a natural byproduct. You desire the opportunity to lead with compassion, to solve complex problems with creativity, to be a reliable and virtuous colleague. These are things entirely within your control. Whether the promotion comes or not, you have already succeeded in your true goal, becoming a better person through your efforts. The external reward becomes irrelevant to your core satisfaction. Your fulfillment is generated from the inside through the quality of your own actions. So take a moment and turn this lens on your own life. Identify one strong desire you are holding onto right now, perhaps for a certain relationship to work out, for a financial goal to be met, or for a particular recognition. Now ask yourself the 2 questions that form the heart of this discipline. Is the object of this desire something entirely within my control? And is this desire aligned with the person of my best character, or is it feeding a lesser part of me? The space between your answers is where your next step toward true freedom lies. The Stoics operated from a profound trust that the universe, in its entirety, is ordered and good. This belief in a divine reason, or logos, was the bedrock of their resilience, a conviction that every event, no matter how chaotic it appears, is woven into a rational and benevolent whole. They called this Providence, and it was not a matter of blind faith, but a reasoned conclusion drawn from observing the intricate, lawful patterns of nature. To them, the cosmos was not a random accident but a living, intelligent entity, and we are conscious parts of that greater body. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this wellspring of strength, reminding himself to accept whatever happens as necessary and familiar, flowing from a source like a spring. He wrote that whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time, and that the thread of your destiny was spun from the first cause. This perspective transforms suffering from a meaningless punishment into a necessary thread in a vast, beautiful tapestry whose full pattern we are too small to see. Think of a master weaver creating an immense work of art. From your position pressed against the back of the canvas, you see only a chaotic tangle of knots and loose threads, a confusing mess of dark colors and abrupt endings. It looks like a mistake, a failure, but the weaver sees the entire design from the front, knowing that every single thread, especially the dark and difficult ones, is essential to creating the depth, shadow, and contrast that will make the final image breathtaking. Your life is that view from the back of the tapestry, and Providence is the weaver's master plan. Now apply this to a profound personal challenge, perhaps the loss of a relationship you believed was forever or a diagnosis that reshaped your future. In the raw immediacy of that pain, the event feels like a cruel, random blow. The Stoic practice is to consciously shift your view, to trust that this thread, however coarse and painful, is being integrated into a larger whole that serves your ultimate growth and the good of the universe itself. It does not mean the pain is not real, but it does mean the pain is not meaningless. This same trust can be your anchor when confronting a confusing or frightening global event, a political upheaval or an environmental shift that seems to signal pure chaos. Trusting in a rational universe does not demand passive approval of every outcome, but it does require an active acceptance of reality as it is, and a faith that within this new landscape, your capacity for virtue and your ability to contribute good remain intact and vital. The chaos becomes a new kind of order you have not yet learned to read, so look back over the narrative of your own life. Can you identify a moment of rupture, a failure or a heartbreak that felt like an ending, but which, with the clarity of time, you now see was a crucial redirect, a closed door that forced you to walk through a better one you would have never chosen for yourself? That hindsight is a tiny glimpse of Providence in action, a fleeting look at the weaver's handiwork from the front of the tapestry. The unfeeling Stoic is a myth. True strength is gentle enough to be kind. A fortress of the mind is not built to isolate you from the world, but to give you a stable foundation from which you can step out and help others without being swept away by the chaos. For the Romans, this inner resilience was never an end in itself. It was the fuel for virtuous action, and the highest virtues were justice and compassion. They understood that we are fundamentally social beings wired for community. Our strength finds its ultimate expression not in what we endure for ourselves, but in the patience, forgiveness, and aid we extend to those around us, especially when times are hard. The Stoic philosopher Hierocles beautifully captured this duty with his model of the circles of concern. He asked us to imagine a series of concentric circles. At the center is your own mind. The next circle holds your immediate family, then your extended family, your local community, your nation, and finally, all of humanity. The practice of a good life, he said, is to constantly work on drawing those outer circles inward, to treat the stranger more like a neighbor and the neighbor more like family. This is the active work of kindness, the deliberate contraction of the distance between us and them. Consider a moment of shared crisis, like a sudden blackout that plunges a city street into darkness and confusion. One person might be gripped by panic, their voice rising in fear. The Stoic strength we have been building is not demonstrated by standing apart with a judgmental calm. It is proven by walking over to that person. It is in the steady tone of your voice as you say, "I am here with you." It is in the practical action of offering the flashlight from your phone, or simply sharing a moment of quiet reassurance. In that gesture, you are not just helping them, you are fortifying your own character. You are practicing justice in its most immediate form, acknowledging your shared humanity and your capacity to be a source of order in a disordered moment. This is strength expressed as service. So today, view a single act of kindness not as a sentimental extra, but as a rigorous exercise for your inner citadel. Choose one small, anonymous act. Pay for the coffee of the person behind you in line. Leave a genuinely encouraging note for a colleague to find. Help a stranger with a heavy load. Do it without any need for recognition or thanks. In that quiet action, you are drawing a circle closer. You are proving that your strength is not for hoarding, but for giving away. What one invisible thread of connection will you weave into the world today? The Stoics saw time as a currency more valuable than gold, and they spent it with the precision of a master banker. Every moment is a non-refundable coin, and how you choose to spend your limited supply determines the entire worth of your life. For them, squandering time on trivial anxieties, hollow entertainment, or petty grievances was not a minor vice. It was the ultimate failure, a theft from your own potential. In his piercing essay on the shortness of life, Seneca confronts this directly. He observes that life is long enough if you know how to use it, but we are not poor in years, we are wasteful. We complain that life is short, while we allow large portions of it to slip through our fingers, lost to procrastination, idle business, and the pursuit of things that do not truly matter. The person who is strong in the Stoic sense is the one who has mastered their attention, directing this precious resource toward what builds character and serves a purpose. Think about the last full day you lived. How many of your waking hours were invested in activities that fortified your inner citadel, that deepened a relationship, or that built a skill? And how many were simply spent, dissipated like coins dropped into a bottomless well? A common modern example is the endless scroll through social media. 1 hour spent passively consuming curated fragments of other people's lives is an hour you will never get back. That same hour, spent learning the basics of a new language, reading a chapter of philosophy, or having a deep, uninterrupted conversation with your child, is an investment that compounds. It deposits strength, knowledge, and connection into the account of your life. The goal is not to fill every second with frantic productivity, but with intentionality. Even rest, when chosen deliberately to recharge your spirit, is a wise and virtuous use of time. Panic and worry are perhaps the most insidious time leaks. An entire afternoon lost to fretting over a future event you cannot control is a double loss. You sacrifice your present peace for absolutely no gain. The Stoic asks you to reclaim that time, to redirect that mental energy toward what you can actually influence. Your most finite resource is trickling away with every heartbeat. Look back on your last 24 hours with clear, non-judgmental eyes. Where did you notice the largest leak? Where did your attention flow without your conscious permission? What is one single, concrete action you can take today to plug it? In the noise of a collapsing world, the most rebellious act can be a moment of pure silence. The Romans understood that a mind constantly bombarded by external voices, alarms, and demands becomes a reactive instrument, unable to hear its own deepest counsel. They cultivated intentional solitude not as an escape from duty, but as the essential training ground where reason is sharpened and character is fortified. This quiet space is where the inner citadel is maintained, where you can hear the whispers of your own principles above the shouting of the crowd. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by the clamor of military camps and the burdens of empire, carved out these pockets of stillness to write his private meditations. It was in those quiet hours that he could converse with his own soul, examine his judgments, and return to the chaos with a renewed and steady resolve. This practice is the antithesis of our modern addiction to stimulation, where every spare moment is filled with a screen, a podcast, or a notification. That constant input drowns out the very inner guide you need to navigate uncertainty. Think of your mind as a lake. The news, social media, and daily pressures are like stones constantly thrown into the water, creating ripples that never settle. You cannot see your own reflection in turbulent water, Solitude is the act of letting the lake become still, so you can finally see yourself clearly again. A practical way to begin is disarmingly simple. Commit to a daily 15-minute walk without your phone. No podcasts, no music, just the rhythm of your steps and the landscape of your own thoughts. Or sit quietly with a cup of tea for 5 minutes before the day officially begins, deliberately refusing to reach for a device. In that silence, you are not doing nothing. You are actively listening. You might notice the initial urge to fidget, the mental itch to be productive or distracted. Observe that impulse without judgment and let it pass. What often arises next is a clarity you had been too busy to access, a solution to a problem that seemed intractable, or simply a profound sense of being present in your own life. So make a specific appointment with yourself for tomorrow. Schedule just 10 minutes of total silence and solitude. Sit in a chair or stand and look out a window. Do not try to force any great revelation. Simply notice. What is the first thought that surfaces when you stop drowning it out? Apatheia is not apathy. It is the state of being undisturbed by the storms of destructive passion. The Stoics were not aiming to become unfeeling statues, devoid of joy or connection. Their goal was far more practical and empowering, to liberate themselves from the irrational, overwhelming emotions that hijack our reason and plunge us into suffering. They called these toxic storms the passions, and they classified them as serious errors in judgment. The early Stoic thinker Chrysippus saw these passions not as random afflictions, but as sicknesses of the soul arising from our mistaken beliefs about what is truly good or bad. He identified 4 primary passions: desire, fear, pleasure, and distress, each stemming from placing far too much importance on things outside our control. The goal of Apatheia is to reach a state of clarity where your emotions are reasoned and proportionate, not absent. Think of the difference between a healthy, flowing stream and a destructive flood. The stream is a natural, useful part of the landscape. The flood is that same water, now out of control, washing away everything in its path. Apatheia is about managing the flow, not damming the river entirely. You can feel a deep, reasoned sadness at the loss of a loved one, a sadness that honors the relationship. This is a natural, healthy emotion. The passion, the destructive flood, would be a prolonged, debilitating depression that tells you your entire life is now ruined and meaningless, a judgment that is simply not true. Your capacity for joy remains intact, even amplified, because it is no longer threatened by the fear of its loss. Consider a moment of sharp envy you may have felt scrolling through social media, seeing a peer celebrate a success you craved for yourself. That pang of envy is a passion. It is rooted in the false judgment that their success has somehow diminished your own worth or stolen your future happiness. It clouds your mind, making you bitter and resentful instead of focused on your own path. Apatheia would not make you numb to their achievement. It would allow you to acknowledge it, perhaps feel a flicker of admiration, and then calmly return your attention to your own work, free from the corrosive inner turmoil. So look inward at a recent emotional storm you weathered. What was one overwhelming negative emotion, a true passion that recently gripped you? Was it a flash of blinding anger in traffic, or a cold dread about a financial worry? Now gently interrogate that feeling. What was the specific judgment, the story you told yourself in that moment, that gave that emotion its power? Did you judge that someone's action was a profound personal insult, or that a potential future event would be an unsurvivable catastrophe? That underlying belief is the fuel for the fire. By bringing it into the light of your reason, you take the first step toward the profound freedom of Apatheia. You would not expect your body to be strong without good food. Your mind is no different. The thoughts you consume are the raw materials for your inner citadel. and a diet of frantic news and trivial entertainment will build a fragile structure indeed. The Roman Stoics treated the reading of philosophy not as a scholarly hobby, but as essential mental nutrition, a daily practice of feeding the mind the profound ideas required to build a resilient and coherent worldview. Just as physical exercise builds muscle over time, consistent engagement with timeless principles builds the mental and emotional resilience to withstand any collapse. This is not about memorizing complex arguments, but about slowly, deliberately reshaping your deepest assumptions about the world and your place within it. Seneca was a fervent advocate for this daily habit, constantly recommending the works of great thinkers as a source of steady guidance. In his letters, he advises Lucilius to gather a small number of master thinkers and to dwell with them daily, to let them become your lifelong companions. He saw it as a form of mental hygiene, a way to wash away the anxieties and false values picked up from the world each day. He wrote that we should enter into a partnership with these great minds, for no good thing is pleasant to possess without friends to share it. The goal is to make their wisdom so familiar that it becomes your own instinctive voice in a moment of crisis. A practical way to begin this is disarmingly simple. Commit to reading just one page from a Stoic text each morning before the day's noise begins. Or, if your time is scarce, use your commute to listen to a philosophical podcast or an audiobook of the meditations. The key is consistency, not volume. It is far better to read one paragraph of Marcus Aurelius and reflect on its meaning for 5 quiet minutes than to skim an entire book without absorbing a single idea. This daily ritual is how you stock the library of your inner fortress with the resources you will need when the storms arrive. So here is a direct challenge for you. For the next 7 days, commit to reading one single Stoic sentence or a short paragraph each day. After you read it, close the book or turn off the screen and ask yourself one simple question. How can I apply this specific idea to one situation I will likely face today? This small, daily act of feeding your mind is one of the most powerful investments you can make in your own unbreakable strength. All these practices lead to one destination, a life of profound flourishing, independent of circumstance. The ancient Romans called this state Eudaimonia, and it was the ultimate prize for all their mental and spiritual training. This is not a fleeting happiness that depends on good news or good fortune. It is a deep, unwavering sense of fulfillment that comes from one thing alone, living in perfect harmony with your own virtue and reason. Think of the inner citadel not just as a fortress for weathering storms, but as a vibrant, self-sustaining garden that thrives regardless of the weather outside. The hypothetical figure who embodies this ideal perfectly is the Stoic sage, a person who has mastered every discipline we have discussed. They greet every event with Amor Fati, love of fate. Their judgments are always sound, their desires perfectly aligned with what is good, and their actions consistently just. While the Stoics were the first to admit that becoming a perfect sage is a superhuman task, perhaps even impossible, they insisted that the true value lies in the pursuit itself. The mere act of striving toward that ideal is what builds the unshakable inner strength we have been exploring. Your journey through this blueprint is that very pursuit. Each time you pause before reacting, each moment you choose reason over panic, each small act of courage or kindness, you are not just solving a single problem. You are sculpting the character of your sage. You are moving closer to a default mode of being where resilience is not something you have to find, but who you inherently are. Marcus Aurelius dedicated his life to this pursuit, writing that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Epictetus taught that the essence of philosophy is that a person should live so that their happiness depends as little as possible on external things. And Seneca pointed out that a good character is the only guarantee of everlasting, carefree happiness. This is the big picture. Every principle, from the dichotomy of control to the contemplation of mortality, is a single tool for building this one good life. So bring this home to your own world. Envision for a moment what your flourishing self looks like. Not a perfect, emotionless statue, but a calm, resilient, and deeply virtuous human being. How do they move through a world of uncertainty? How do they speak? How do they listen? How do they make decisions from that place of unshakable inner strength? Now, with that vision clear in your mind, ask yourself one final, practical question. What is the single most important step you can take today to move even an inch closer to that version of you? Your inner strength is not a gift from the world, but a structure you build within it. This Roman Stoic blueprint is a timeless framework for forging resilience from the inside out, a fortress of character that stands unshaken by any external collapse. We have walked through the core pillars of this ancient wisdom, from drawing the fundamental line between what you can and cannot control to constructing your own unbreachable inner citadel. We explored the radical acceptance of Amor Fati, loving your fate exactly as it unfolds, and the daily disciplines that train the mind to find peace not in the absence of chaos, but in its midst. These are not abstract ideas, they are practical tools for living. Marcus Aurelius, who faced down plagues and wars, found his anchor in a simple truth. He wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." This is the peace that comes from no longer fighting reality, but from engaging with it fully, armed with virtue and reason. This is not a one-time lesson to be learned and filed away. It is a lifelong practice, a daily conversation with your own soul. The true transformation happens not in the watching, but in the doing. So here is your call to action. This week, choose just one principle from this blueprint to practice with intention. Perhaps you will focus on the dichotomy of control, mentally sorting your worries into 2 columns each morning. Maybe you will build your inner citadel by taking a 5-minute walk in total silence, reclaiming your mental space. Or you could practice negative visualization, holding your dearest possession or relationship in your mind for a moment and feeling the profound gratitude that floods in when you release that thought. Begin there, then share your journey. In the comments below, tell us which principle you are practicing and what you are discovering. Let us build a community of practice, a modern Stoa where we can support each other in cultivating this unbreakable strength. You have the tools, you have the power. The path to an empowered and self-reliant life does not begin when the world becomes calm. It begins with your very